Aspetta, aspetta. Yes. Yes.
Arturo, I can see you, I can hear you, but Faisal and Begum doesn't see you.
I don't know.
It's weird. You see everyone here?
I see everyone.
You see Begum, you see...
Yeah. I see everyone. I see George, I see you, Hamid, people in the audience. I can see everything and everyone.
Very interesting.
Arturo, you are in invisible mode.
I don't know how to act.
It's okay. In the back? In your back?
Oh.
Nothing. Oh, but you are in megaphone mode. You can. Everyone can hear you.
So everyone can hear me and everyone can see me.
Yes, yes.
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 It is because there are parallel worlds as well. So the audience here is like around 10 people, 15 people, and there are other parallel pylons as well. So they are watching, they are hearing us and watching us from other parallel worlds, but we cannot hear, we cannot see all of them. We can hear them, but we cannot see all of them. They are hearing us and watching us from other parallel worlds, but in 1 minute we will start, okay? Sorry for this delay. I'm really sorry.
No problem. Okay, no problem.
Okay. In 1 minute we will start, okay? Sorry for this delay. I'm really sorry.
No problem. Because I don't see anyone, I hope I'm not overlapping with another entity.
In 1 minute we will start, okay? Sorry for this delay. I'm really sorry. No, I totally see you. I hear you.
I'm not overlapping
okay.
with another entity.
So far, so good.
No, I totally see you. I hear you.
I'm not overlapping
okay.
with another entity.
So far, so good. Ah, Arturo, now I see you.
I didn't do anything, actually.
So far, so good. Interesting, okay.
I didn't change any options or whatever.
I didn't do anything, actually.
I didn't do anything, actually.
I didn't change any options.
I didn't change any options or whatever.
I didn't do anything, actually.
I didn't do anything, actually.
Okay, guys, I'm setting the camera to start.
Okay.
I didn't do anything, actually.
Okay, guys, I'm setting the camera to start.
Okay.
Okay, guys, I'm setting the camera to start.
Okay.
Okay, guys, I'm setting the camera to start.
Okay.
Okay, guys, I'm setting the camera to start. Okay, we can start. We can go. I hear my own voice from one of you guys, from the microphone of one of you guys. If you would like to mute, I don't know if Begum or Faisal, is it your microphone? My own voice from one of
Not mine.
from the microphone of one of you guys. No, it's not mine. Okay, let's go. Guys, thank you so much for joining to this panel discussion by Arturo Tedeschi and George Kachaamy. So if you are inside the pylon, please come to the auditorium room and join this amazing discussion, panel discussion. So today we have Arturo and George Kachaamy. Arturo is an architect and computational design specialist with more than 10 years of experience in the avant-garde segment of architecture and industrial design, furniture, automotive installation, products, and footwear. He works as a consultant for leading companies providing services of training related to algorithmic modeling, complex geometry, digital fabrication, and data-driven design. And also George Kachaamy, Dr. George Kachaamy is the director of the Center for Research and Design, CRID, at the School of the Architecture, Art and Design, American University in Dubai. He has served as the head of architecture under which the program has received the NAAC accreditation. He is the professor of architecture, a registered architect, of ordered and of engineers, and an associate member of the American Institute of Architects. So welcome, guys. The mic is yours if you want to say hello to our audience.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for inviting me today. It's a great pleasure to be here. I hope that you can hear me well. I can actually hear some echo. I don't know if you can.
I
if
think
you
it's
receive my voice properly.
Can you just mute yourself, George? When you are talking, you can open the microphone.
I don't know if you can.
Also,
okay,
if everyone
Arturo,
could please wear headphones or lower the speakers on their computer. That's where the feedback is coming from.
When you are talking, you can open the microphone. Perfect. Arturo, you can go on.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I was saying thank you for having me today. It's a great pleasure. It's actually the first time I'm doing something like a speech in a virtual environment. So it's like, the first one I'm doing this. It's actually a novel experience. So thank you for having me. A speech in a virtual environment. So
George?
it's like, the first one I'm doing this.
Yes, hello everyone, and thank you for having me today at Pylon Illusorr. It is actually quite fascinating to see the virtual built environment here. And I'm glad to see, this type of event surfacing. I guess, one can say this is one of the advantages of what occurred this year. So thank you for having me, guys. And, I'm very excited about it. Event surfacing, I guess, one can
Thank you so much. Thanks again for joining. And I want to start the conversation from going a little bit inside today's technologies around virtual reality. Asking this question from both of you guys, what do you think generally about the virtual reality and virtual spaces that are being like these spaces that we are experiencing in virtual world now? For example, this Pylon, Illusorr, or Sansar. We may not experience them inside the physical world. So this is quite like a new topic in architecture and design world. That's how we can use virtual spaces to showcase our designs. Architects, how they can use these virtual spaces. And I know Arturo has a deep research and work inside the virtual space as well. So asking both of you this question, what do you think about today's virtual reality and virtual spaces?
Okay, can I start talking?
Yes, please go ahead. Of course.
Okay, sorry, sometimes I cannot hear you properly. That's why. Okay. Thanks, Amit, for the question, which is absolutely central and interesting. Well, you mentioned that I already worked with virtual reality, and I've done a couple of projects. The first one is furniture, is a chair, to be precise, that was designed using
Oyster chair.
The Oyster chair that we actually completely designed without any traditional interaction with the digital matter. But we worked with the HTC Vive and a virtual space called MindDesk in order to manipulate the shapes. And also recently, we designed a car that is also exhibited here in Illusorr. Also trying to integrating the Rhino as a 3D modeling software with the other software that are generally used for video games. And virtual reality was amazing for controlling the shape, for experiences the car before it was actually designed, and was absolutely a kind of new approach that gives a lot of benefits to the designers. But I want to say something more, that human beings, they always try to extend the physical space. I think virtual reality is a topic that actually had different names over the years. And I can recognize two moments in the history of human beings about virtual reality. We had a first stage where we tried as humans to expand the limitation of the physicality with novels, for example, with epic poems over the years. And the computer is only a stage of this kind of attempts for humanity to explore, to extend the physicality. First of all, because if you think about it, everything that we can perceive is in our brain. And that's the reason why we can design, we can visualize, and we can explore different ideas. But we will always do it in our brain. And the computer, of course, creates a new layer in a way. For example, I think that the first kind of virtual reality system that you can explore, that you can experience in opening a computer is the desktop. When you are like hovering the mouse over the desktop, this is, in a way, the first virtual space and we use it every day. But also the carnival, if you think about Halloween, for example, we are using masks and we disguise ourselves in order to be someone else. And this is something that we are like using right now. For example, we are avatar, I'm using a different digital identity like this. And so virtual reality, I think it's deeply connected with the history and evolution of the perception of reality. And there was a first stage that, I mean, we can use a kind of objective, which is solitary, loneliness. We end up in a book, we and a computer. Nowadays, we are, thanks to the internet, this idea of virtual is about connection, it's about services. We can chat. I'm from 79, so I used and I experienced all these virtual reality spaces and systems from Second Life. I don't know if you remember, was a very famous software in the early 2000s, for example, but the first chats and forums. And nowadays we have meeting apps and different systems. So I think that our brain is absolutely prepared to explore this kind of new possibilities and ways to design, for example, since we are designers, to imagine new tools and new systems in order to create objects in a different way. I think that we need, first of all, it's not only about tools, but it's also about creating something which is meaningful. When we designed the chair, for example, the idea was to create a kind of primitive object. When I say primitive, it's like sculpting something with digital hands. So in a way, our intention was to create something with a pure interaction with the matter, but in that case was a digital matter. We didn't use our physical hands, but something that was an extension into the virtual space. When I say meaningful, it's like if we are designers, we are not creating video games. So we are not just providing, spaces for doing meaningless exploration, but we need to improve services, we need to improve products or architecture as well. And I think there is a kind of contradiction in virtual reality as well, because in a way we have the possibility to remove, for example, gravity. We can play with different rules instead of the one that we have in the physical world. We can remove any kind of limitation, but in the same time, we need to simulate something which looks real in order to be intelligible, in order to be understood from people. So I guess it's an absolutely open topic, and it's not about tools, but it's about understanding how virtual reality plays itself in a kind of, in a kind of a human experience that always try to, expands the possibility of exploration. And as I mentioned before, every stage in the human history had a kind of way to expand those limitations. For example, I didn't mention before, but lysergic trip over the 70s, of course, of music and cinema, they try to do it. And nowadays we have the technology, we have the possibilities to actually use virtual reality systems and also theories in order to improve products and spaces.
Wow, very inspiring. Amazing. Thank you. What do you think about this, George?
Well, to tell you first, us at the Center for Research, Innovation and Design at the American University in Dubai, we embrace very much technology in general, and we have a digital emphasis that maps to the goal of the school that relate to all these advanced tools. For example, since Sensorama in 1960s, VR had multiple waves. Appearing and disappearing. It comes and goes. But I believe now it is here to stay. And for example, in my research, I actually work on gravity-defined architecture, and where I have to design buildings and elements that actually defies gravity. And in this situation, VR is helping me immensely in evolving better that design and evolving better, the approach to that. So I think, extended reality in general, not only virtual reality, but, augmented reality, mixed reality, they are now tools here, very helpful, and they are here to stay. They might evolve and change depending on, of the, technologies, but they're definitely a step forward.
That's right. Exactly. That's true. So what do you think? What are the... Yes?
Yeah,
Is there any question? Yes, sure.
Ask,
go on.
George, so when it comes to sort of building for virtual cities, how do you think that's going to differ from building or urban design in the physical world? Because when it comes to sort of traditional urban design, the first parameters we look at are things like road networks and how people navigate. Do you think that's the same approach we're going to have when designing for virtual cities, or are we going to have a completely different type of...
I'm sorry, Faisal. Unfortunately, I could not hear very well your question. Is it okay to repeat? I'm sorry, but because your sound is very far.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Am I on the megaphone?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
You are in the megaphone. Yeah. Just make microphone closer to your mouth.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, better. Go on.
Okay, so I was talking about the sort of approach we have when designing urban design. In the physical world, we sort of approach that in terms of road networks primarily, right? I wanted to ask if you think that we're going to have the same approach when it comes to virtual cities. So we're going to still design based on road networks and navigation, or is there a completely new approach that we're going to have for virtual cities?
Okay, so to answer that, look, I feel the advantage of virtual reality is that you can have both options, while in reality, the physical reality, you cannot have that. So what the virtual world is offer a kind of a simulation where you can actually do the same as if in real world, and depending on if you want to do that, because you can simulate a real element or a real city in virtual reality, or you can expand, or you can change, or you can create something that's totally, imaginative or totally fantastical. So I think you can do both in virtual reality, which that depends on the goal. And in general, technology has always been incorporated in architecture throughout history. I mean, having electricity at home is a technology at home. So I think now one of the really good things about what's happening is, and I find it fascinating, is that VR is architecture is being incorporated in technology and not the other way around. So and in this way, it can affect and influence directly our experience, and that's the most important thing. At least the visual and auditory ones. Until we evolve better the haptic technology, I feel that at the moment it will remain audiovisual, but I don't see a way that we have to just follow the same way that we design, whether cities or architecture or any type of space.
Right. Awesome. And Arturo, do you think that as well? Do you agree with George's comment?
Yeah, of course. And if I'm think about designing digital spaces, and in general, when we think about architecture is like a repetition of rooms or spaces with an envelope in a way. When I think about physical spaces, it's more important, I think, to focus on the idea of digital experiences. And instead, I'm using the word room because it's very easy to imagine it. Instead of using rooms in digital spaces, I think we need to embrace the idea of layers. Before we started this talk, Hamid says there are people in parallel worlds right now. There are different auditorium in a kind of layered dimension. So I mean, we can move between different spaces using sort of stargates. So I mean, the architecture is we can imagine an architecture in n dimensions. But as I mentioned before, we are living in VR a kind of contradiction. In a way, we can push the boundaries, creating a kind of proper dimension for a virtual space. But in the same way, we need to make things recognizable. But I mean, that's the great challenge, creating a kind of n-dimension architecture so we can go over the three-dimensionality or the simulation of three-dimensionality. For example, here we have an auditorium that simulates the idea of different, design like a set of steps in order to be sit on them. But probably the idea of layering, the idea of creating n-dimension architecture is proper in this kind of space. And it's something completely new.
Right,
That's absolutely
absolutely
true. Just going forward to connect our virtual world with the physical world. For example, if you want to design something in normal physical world, we would say, let's say we are designing a building. Everyone would ask where is the context? What is the context for this building? Or for example, you are designing a product. What should be the concept behind it, and how it is related to the subject that it's going to serve. So while we are designing for virtual spaces, what do you think should we consider about the context in the virtual world as well, like virtual spaces with contexts? How, if yes, how it should be context performed design? What do you think about it?
Well, to me, Hamid, it depends on the specific service you are working on. I said before, designing virtual spaces is not about creating the environment for a video games. I can imagine, for example, that a kind of social network like Facebook is translating its interface into something like Illusorr, for example. And so the context is not like how I create a relation between a digital
Arturo,
building.
do you hear me?
Sorry. Yeah, I can hear you.
I think there are some lags on your microphone. Can you just check it if it's connected, or because I just hear some words.
Okay. Well, it's perfectly connected. I mean, in terms of hardware, it's working now.
Yes.
Okay, let's do it again.
Okay, sorry to interrupt.
No problem. It's actually, please interrupt me if some problem may occur. Okay.
Thank you.
No, I was saying that it depends on the service, because to me, VR connected with architecture is not, as I mentioned before, it's not about creating just the environment in a kind of video game system. I imagine social networks like Instagram or Facebook, I can see how, a possible translation in VR. So, I mean, I don't know, if we have to create a space for doing VR chatting or rooms where we can exhibit our projects, for example, that's the way a kind of digital architecture can really happen. And so everything is about creating something which is user-friendly, which actually works and is not complex to use, for example. And again, there is this kind of contradiction, because we need to make things similar to the real world, but in the same time it must fit with the digital system we are using in a way. So I don't see actually a kind of relationship as we are currently doing in the physical world, because we are real buildings, we are the natural context, and so on. I think it's about meeting the expectation and the specific system. For example, when I got into Illusorr for the first time on Friday, I was in the main space, and I met people from the I know on Instagram, for example, and we started conversating, and I immediately understood the potential of this kind of novel kind of communication, which is not just about texting, but you can see a kind of avatar, you can feel the other person. So to me, the relationship and in terms of digital architecture and spaces is about experience more than physical connection, and is not about how you design actually the shape, but it's about the experience.
Absolutely. What about you, George? What do you think about the importance of context inside virtual spaces?
Look, I think you have to ask, to whom we are creating this. So if we are creating this for a human experience, then there is a way that you need to have reference with that. So, one of the most important are the user experience, correct? So it is important to take into consideration fundamental elements that relates to the user. For example, could be comfort, ease of interface, motion, field of view, depth perception. So I think context is very important. And whether we do it virtually or we do it in reality, in both is important. So because it is very much related to any human experience and can affect the understanding of space, the perception of space, and choices, based on that. So what I mean is, whether a context is based, on the real existing one or just a fantastical one, It is important. You can take one small thing that usually happens here, teleporting. I mean, this is never happen in the real world. But when you teleport from one point to another, there is a context. You go from A to B, and A has a certain context, B has a certain context. So I think it is important because it provides a reference point, a scale, even a meaning to any space, whether virtually or real.
Awesome. So given sort of the different takes on how to design for the virtual world, we have Begum here who's actually designed the Illusorr virtual city. So I wanted to ask, what kind of approaches and what kind of parameters did you use when designing Illusorr city?
Thank you, Faisal. First of all, we haven't, you don't see the Illusorr city yet. Right now we are in pilot, but we will launch Illusorr city soon.
Begum, sorry, I can hear some feedback from your mic.
Is it good now?
No, I can't hear properly. Guys, can you hear properly, or is it from my...
No, there is a feedback also here. I can hear it.
Yes, can you try again, Begum?
Is it better now?
Nope, it's the same here.
Yeah, it's the same.
Okay, let's leave it then. I will try to solve it, and you can continue once I'm solving.
Okay, so I'll ask Arturo this question then. You spoke about sort of social media transitioning into virtual worlds like Illusorr. So instead of sort of waking up and looking at your phone to scroll through Instagram or Twitter, you sort of enter Illusorr and sort of see people almost like in real life. I wanted to ask, do you think it's possible for sort of cities and the way humans interact to fully transition into the virtual world? And maybe not fully, but let's say 99%. So, from schooling to offices to shopping to most of our experiences being transitioned or transferred into the virtual world. Do you see that in the future?
There is something interesting in this question. If you ask me that, let's say 10 years ago, I probably would have said no. But, first of all, we are spending, I don't know, like 5 days ago, I checked my phone and I realized that I spent like 7 hours on my phone. And I didn't realize that. So we are ready, merging and crashing the digital with the real world. But it's just about the tool we are using with it, which is a phone right now. Of course, you can use a phone meanwhile you are in the subway, meanwhile you are maybe preparing your food or whatever. It's not possible to be in a VR environment if you are doing other things. But you mentioned, a kind of percentage. I guess that we are going towards a kind of 40% of virtual experiences because it works actually. And we are experiencing right now during the pandemic that probably doing conferences online or meetings or whatever, it works. It is saving a lot of time that we can use for our existence, our lives. The people that are close to us and whatever. So in a way, I think that human beings change their habits when something actually works. And it gives us more time for the things that we care of in a way. So I think that we are going toward a kind of transition. But again, we are still spending... we are already, I like to use the word crashing the digital world with the physical one. And for example, at this particular stage, the phone is a real extension of our body in a way. of course, there are implications and consequences about that, but I usually try to look only to the positive aspects of that. And again, it's about experience. It's about creating a proper experience that works for everyone. We are organizing every day now meetings on Zooms or Teams or whatever. I'm sure that it is possible to create, for example, a kind of innovative space for doing meetings, which improves the experience of conversating with people, for example. We are still in an early stage of digital design where we are still simulating the physical world into the digital one. I always like to do a kind of analogy or metaphor. If you consider the first car in the early 90s, in the early years of 20th century, they look like carriages, like horse carriages. And over the years, we shaped the cars like a proper vehicle, And so we are still in this metaphor, we are still using horse carriages, and we are like going through real proper designed environments for the digital interaction.
Right, absolutely. And before I move on to George's, I just wanted to ask you as well. There was this amazing question yesterday for Michael's talk, and I wanted to hear your perspective on it. Do you think that, or what don't you think will be able to be transferred into the virtual world? What kind of experiences can only be had in the physical world that we won't be able to sort of simulate in the future?
Is the question for me, Faisal? Sorry.
Yes, Arturo.
Okay. Well, again, it's about. Sorry, I cannot. There is a kind of feedback, horrible feedbacks. Can you hear me?
Yeah, there's an echo. Are you using headphones?
Yeah, absolutely. With the volume of my mic is very low. So, can you hear me now?
It's better now.
Okay,
yes, it's better.
Perfect.
It's better.
Okay, let's do it again. I was saying that it depends on the technology evolution. I said in the first answer that everything we are experiencing is experienced in our brain. So right now it's not possible to simulate a smell, in a virtual space. But I'm pretty sure that it will be possible in, let's say, 10 days, 15 days. I'm absolutely, I like movies a lot, and there are a lot of movies over the years that were describing this kind of scenario. There is the Lone Mower Man, for example, or Matrix, of course, and other movies, Johnny Mnemonic or Nirvana by Gabriele Salvatore. There are a lot of movies that are talking about that. It's just about technology, but if everything that we see, feel, it's about... it's like it happens inside our brain. It's about stimulation, So I'm pretty sure that it will going to happen in a few years, that we can actually translate, the perception, feelings, smell, and whatever. Right now, of course, it's not possible because the technology doesn't allow to do that. So, of course, we can simulate a kind of a new sociality inside the VR environment. And I said before, VR was about loneliness in the past. If you were reading a book, a novel, a poem, or you were doing a lysergic trip, was about a kind of solitary experience. I think that sociality is the natural, in a way, is a natural space for virtual. For VR and for a new typology of spaces and new digital architects.
Awesome. Thank you, Arturo. And there's a question here I'd like to ask Georges. It's from Nilan.
Before, is it okay to is it okay to actually comment in addition on these two questions that has been asked, or no?
Oh yeah, sure. Sure. Sorry, go ahead.
So, I mean, for the question that you asked, Arturo, I think what he said is actually spot on. But I would like to add that, I think the current global situation has shown that we can adapt to a situation that exceeds, what we considered as normal. So we manage in a quick way to start, using new ways, digital tools, in order to, to maintain our social connectedness. So I see always a way, to provide more options and opportunities to humanity, and VR definitely is doing that. Also, this will depend on inclusivity and on providing the affordable technology and the digital infrastructure to all societies. So if take for example, Arturo mentioned the phone, the mobile. If it was not affordable, we're not all using it now. So it is important that when in this situation, when VR becomes more affordable, which I think some of the big tech giants are trying to do that. So when you can get a headset or an all-inclusive headset that allows you in a very affordable way to access the virtual world, then this would be easier for the majority of us to do it. Until this happens, this will still a problem. Now, about what kind of, you mentioned about what are the things that we might not be able to replicate. Was it that the second question?
Yes, sure. That was the question.
So I think the powerful aspect in VR is that it can trigger emotions faster and easier than what a normal 2D screen or, for example, movies used to do. Now VR can visually and acoustically simulate reality, and through that, trigger strong feelings. Take, for example, when you are standing on an edge in VR or on the edge of a cliff and looking down. I mean, it is virtual. Your brain knows it is virtual, yet it triggered that same feeling if you are in real physical world. I guess our brain does not really differentiate much, and it gives the signal of the careful to fall feeling. This is very interesting. Of course, now to more specify that, to answer more on that. So we have the other three senses that are being, researched to try and incorporate digitally in VR, because this technology is not evolved enough. You cannot feel the warmth, the touch, the taste, and the smell are yet very difficult to simulate. But they are trying to do some. I mean, there are some work that's being done where they also try to allow you for a haptic experience. And with that, the lack of all social functions that requires these senses, if you cannot do that, then this will always be absent. Now, you do not take me wrong. You can still accomplish a lot with the first two senses already, and cinematography has mastered that. Okay, so that's my comment.
Awesome. And
when do you think?
Can you
Okay,
hear me?
Begum, you want to continue?
Just want to check if you can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear, but still there are some feedbacks.
If it's good, I can continue. You guys can let me know if it's good to go, my voice.
I can hear you, but there is always a kind of noise in the background.
Okay, I'm turning my mic off.
Okay, so looking into the future, and as we all know that virtual space somehow will gonna integrate to our lives in the future more, and maybe now a daily virtual space designer, for example, spends 2 or 3 hours of his time inside a virtual world, or a normal person who doesn't never spend any time on it, or just the people who are related to the virtual space, just 2 hours maximum or 1 hour maximum inside virtual spaces. What do you think about in the future, how this virtual world will be affecting our lives in the future? Like, will it be available for us to spend more time on it? What do you think? What will happen in the future?
Well, Amit, can you hear me, first of all?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you actually your question is goes like directly to a very important point. As I mentioned before, we use VR for designing objects. It does mean that you spend more than 2 hours, but probably something like 20 hours. I mean, of course, not in a consecutive way. And was absolutely tiring not only for your eyes or brain, but also for your arms, because you are using joysticks or any other tools in order to design and model in the virtual reality space. So it was very tiring. I always thought about augmented reality as the proper tool for designers, if I think at the current stage. So like integrating the physical space with the virtual one. And of course, it's about technology and interface. So it's an open question. I hope so. And I think that we are absolutely going through something which is, more friendly and easy to use, but it's of course an open question. I really hope so. For me, it was a kind of limitation, I have to say, and it's not something that you can use like a normal input device that you already have on your computer. But I'm absolutely optimistic on that.
I can also comment on that if you want, guys. So when I was taking training in VR, I actually learned and experienced, actually not only learned, that usually the brain is not equipped for certain things in VR. Like for example, teleportation. Like for example, if the graphic is moving a little bit, so you get some motion sickness. This is one example. But then there's a lot of researches that now currently are being done to try to improve that, to try to give you tips and tricks of how you need to do and how you need to behave so that you don't fall into these type of things. Look, for example, if you sit on a chair and you are seeing in a certain perspective while you are in VR, your brain is actually equipped to not to see that lower perspective. It is trained to see a higher perspective when you're standing, and that, believe me, can create motion sickness for you. So teleporting. So when you teleport, if you keep your eye open, you sometimes have some motion sickness. So there's a way that actually they are evolving and they are making this better so that you can spend more time in it, and it can not make you that sensitive to this technology. And I'm very optimistic. I think there's a lot of things that came a long way, like tricks that you have to blink your eye if you're going from one place to another in a fast way, so that when you blink your eye, your brain understands that it's another scene that you're seeing. So there's a lot in user experience learning that one can learn in VR. And with time and research, this definitely will be improved.
Yeah, absolutely. We're not, in terms of technology, we're not there yet to spend the full day inside a virtual space, or not a full day, let alone 2 or 3 hours, as Arturo described. And not even 2-3 hours, you would feel like pain in your eyes, pain in your head, pain in your hands. So the technology is not there yet. But imagine like this as the first days of the internet, like 1995 to 1990s or 2000, and it developed by the time. And I think maybe in less than 10 years, we would have some kind of like tools that we would implement, or we would use them to join these kind of virtual spaces. But definitely we will see what's going to happen in the future.
Hamid, it's also important to say that it's not only, we have to distinguish between navigating a virtual space and designing into a virtual space that are really different things. When we were designing the chair or the car, we need a lot of, we created, for example, a three-dimensional grid in order to have points. You know, when you are using a CAD, you have OSNAP, you have a grid. We created a specific three-dimensional grid in order to, that helped us in order to create something in an easy way. So this is another topic. It's not only about navigating, but it's about really designing in a new way. And there are a lot of things to do in that direction.
You are absolutely right. Absolutely right. Yeah, there are many difficulties in terms of design itself as well. As you mentioned, one of them, the navigation points, to set some kind of rules inside these virtual spaces in design terms. So these are important things that I hope they will be developed in near future. Yeah. Do we have any questions from our audience from Discord or from the audience inside the auditorium?
Yeah, we actually have this great question from Nilan. If Nilan's in the audience, would you like to ask it? It goes very well with what we're talking about, with the sort of experience within virtual reality.
Nilan is here actually. Nilan, can you just approach us to the stage and ask your question?
Yes, and if
Nilan is flying in here.
If Oleg or Mark can give Nilan a megaphone.
Nilan, do you hear us? Nilan? Okay, maybe you can ask.
Okay, so Nilan says, talking about experience like Arturo mentioned, what do you think about the psychological impact these spaces can have on a user? Can there be any negative impact on the mind since there are far lesser controls than the real world?
Well, I can see all the benefits when we design the chair, which is a simple object, but that we use the chair as a proving ground for creating, something simple. Actually, we explored the design in a novel way. I know it looks very trivial, but where you are using a three-dimensional tool, you are sit on a chair, so you don't move, and the object generally moves around you. With your navigating system, the mouse, a 3D navigator, whatever, you navigate the object, and so the object moves around you. When we designed the chair, we were sculpting the object and we were moving around it. I know it's trivial, it looks super simple, but it changes drastically the way you see the digital objects, and you explore them, you explore different ways for designing it. When we this year designed a concept car, we do it for a Volkswagen exhibition. We were designing the car. We were two designers, two people. One was inside the car and the other one was outside. And we were, now it's difficult to explain how, but we were designing together the object, and one of them was outside and one inside. This is something that you cannot do in a three-dimensional software, in a standard three-dimensional software without VR. And this is absolutely game-changing. I can see only the benefits from them. I don't see any kind of problem, actually.
What about you, George? Do you have anything to add to this question?
I have to ask you to repeat that question because I really did not hear that.
Faisal, you want to repeat it again?
Yes, sure. George, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so the question is, talking about experience like Arturo mentioned, what do you think about the psychological impact these spaces can have on a user? Can there be any negative impact on the mind since there are far lesser controls than the real world?
Oh, that's actually a very interesting question. It's very difficult also to answer it because you cannot know. These type of things you only can know with research, with time, and with experiments. So, but if you want me to kind of like predict, I think it will definitely have an effect on it. Whether positively or negatively, this we have to wait and see. But you could be expecting doing things in VR, and your mind have tricks and things that okay, this is fine to do, and then maybe go back to reality and have some confusion. But I think this is we have to wait to know about this.
Moving forward about another section of our discussion, one of the important sections, one of the important actually topics is education. I know, George, you are a lecturer, you are at the university, and you are somehow adapted to the physical ways of education as well. First, I want to ask, how was this transition from normal physical education to first on Zoom? Because at the beginning of the pandemic, it just changed totally to from physical to virtual space. And we are all now experiencing that as well in universities, in workshops, somehow in meetings. And secondly, what do you think it would bring us the value if we do these kind of educational classes or educational systems close to the virtual spaces to hold the classes inside virtual spaces? For example, we were interviewing, we were discussing this with Sansar officials as well, the founders of this platform, Sansar. So they said, yeah, we are trying to develop our infrastructures to host something like university classes, workshops inside the platforms as well. They said there are still professors who are doing workshops inside our platform. But in terms of like academia, what does academia thinks? Is this possible to bring the universities or to bring the education system close to virtual spaces and having some kind of interactive classes inside virtual spaces? What do you think about that?
To tell you the truth, it's absolutely, and it is needed. But let me a little bit explain to you. Usually in education, you have different type of delivery of courses. So you have different type of courses. You have the lecture-based courses. You have, for example, especially in our field, in architectural field, you have, for example, the studio-based courses. You have the technology-based courses, design-build courses. So there are different type of courses, and each course has its own, limitation and own complexity to deal with. Like, for example, lecture-based courses are easier to go online than studio-based courses, which actually require, learning by doing things physically. For example, in studio, you have to try to do study models. You have to work by hand, and I think that has created a little bit of challenge for us. But to tell you the truth, since the field and the discipline, because also it depends on discipline, in architecture, we're quite technology savvy. So we already deals with digital, we already deals with technology. So transitioning was not a big deal for us. I can tell you at the American University in Dubai, it was very smooth. We had very smooth transitioning, whether it was lecture or any type of other courses. The only thing that we had a little bit of challenges is the studio-based courses, because, in studio, we're used to do things by hand, and whether we do it as an iterative process or we do it by constructing physical models and so forth. Now what the CRIT is trying to do, and I think this is also will be pushed in education, is we want to bring in the virtual world also as an active design. What do I mean by active design? Is not you walk through and you maneuver and you navigate within a certain already designed element, but you actually design space while you are in virtual reality. And that's, I think, is a step forward, and that's, I think, is a tool, and again I emphasize on tool, that could be used in design studios, where actually you could work with the student, they could see the design, and they can be inside that design, or scale it up or scale it down, and actually do changes while they are in the design. And I think that is the advantage of virtual reality, and this is what we're trying to push. So this is more of active designing than a passive one, and it allows the opportunity for students to, to change their design while they are in virtual reality. And this is for sure we're going to do. And we're very open to all these type of collaboration. Definitely with Sensar, with you guys, we can do many things.
Exactly. And Arturo, I know, I remember from the first days of the pandemic, we started going to virtual workshops as well, and we did a lot of stuff together. And I want your comment on this as well. What do you think if we make this transition from, we made already one from physical education to go to Zoom education, and also what do you think if we make this transition from Zoom to virtual space education?
I was discussing with the CEO of an important company a couple of days ago, and we were talking about education and training for companies, which is a very important topic right now, because during the pandemic, big companies, they couldn't open their doors to external trainers, and it was a problem in a way. And everyone switched to Zoom, for example, or anyway, online training. And you know what this guy told me? He told me, Arturo, we will probably never come back to the in-person training because it works better anyway. It's like easier to organize. It's you don't have to use physical spaces. About scheduling, everything is easier. I think that we are, as human beings, we are creator of habits, of course, but we are very practical. If something works, we will probably switch to them. And George said something very important before. He said everything also depends on if a technology is accessible or not. If we improve the accessibility of like technologies, or both hardware and software, I'm sure that that's the new point. For example, from my point of view, I'm as a teacher, as an online trainer, I remember at the beginning was absolutely frustrating to just like speaking in front of a screen without feeling the experience, the interaction with students. And Hamid, that we have done many online conferences and trainings, and the main interaction tool was the chat, and right now it's still the chat. So you can type and you can interact with people. But for example, I can see people in the audience. It's a different perception that I have. And in terms of education or training, again, it's also about to find new ways for also evaluating the level of understanding. This is another point. If I have a physical class, I know it looks trivial again, but I can understand if someone is understanding or not. The level of attention, I can really feel it also just, just like from the students' eyes in a way. I can really perceive the level of attention and understanding. We need to create a system for not only for evaluating, for testing, in terms of scores, but understanding the level of attention. It's an understanding. It's a kind of new challenge because as a teacher, I always understood it from using just the eyes and the feelings that I have in that moment. So we need to translate also this kind of thing, which is very important. But I absolutely think it's less frustrating also having a kind of VR experience and a digital experience of a kind of digital interaction, which is not only speaking in front of a screen and just typing answer in a chat.
That's absolutely amazing. That's right. Yeah. Awesome. So, Faisal, Begum, do we have any questions from audience? Faisal, Begum?
Yeah, so we were having questions about the world, actually. People were sort of giving compliments about Pylon. And yeah, so for anyone asking, it was designed using Houdini FX and using procedural modeling. And hopefully we'll have a talk on that in the future to sort of explain how it was designed. And people can ask more questions about that.
Do we have questions to ask from Arturo and George? Like from audience on Discord? Okay, it seems we can continue with the topics. So there are some kind of movies that also, Arturo, you mentioned that they are also pushing the technology forward. And you mentioned Matrix, and according to one of the movies that Player Number One, that we discussed this before with Sansar Group as well. The Player Number One is let's say is the forward-thinking version of very futuristic version of a virtual space. What do you think? How far could be the humanity to start enjoying the virtual space more than the physical space? And also, George, you can. I need your comments on this as well.
Well, that's a very difficult question to answer. I mean, we are physical creatures, so well, I don't know. Maybe it's my answer is more a reaction as an animal, and not as a researcher. But the first reaction is, of course, we will probably. We will never enjoy, not enjoy, but embrace radically and totally the digital space, of course. But again, I'm very, I don't know, when I give these kinds of answer, in the same times I say, well, probably won't be like this, or there is something that I cannot predict right now. And again, my main reference is about brain. There is a movie which is, I think it's from 1995 or more or less, is The Lawnmower Man, which talks about a guy that using virtual reality, it enhances his skills and possibilities. Actually, it becomes like a god or something like that. And everything is about brain. You know that we are just using the 20% of our brain. You know, it's a like very common topic. I guess that probably living or experiences daily virtual space that actually stimulates our brain. It can also stimulate new possibilities that we don't know right now. I mean, that's something that is scary, but in the same time super exciting. I think that probably a kind of daily experience with digital environments, with new kind of stimuli, they can really improve our vision, our ideas, our perception. And even if I don't think that we are going to live in a virtual space. Of course, it's not possible. But I'm just like focusing in this idea that probably we can really use our brain in a different way, and maybe in a better way, thanks to the new stimuli that will come from novel technologies and future technologies, and both software and hardware.
Arturo,
from my end,
yeah.
Sorry, I just want
from my end,
I have a follow-up question
go ahead,
for Arturo. Yeah, based on that, Arturo, how do you think we can better integrate virtual worlds with physical worlds then, since we might never transition into fully virtual worlds because we are sort of, biological beings at the end of the day. So how can we sort of begin to integrate virtual cities with physical ones to create sort of the future of humanity?
Well, it's about interfaces to me. I mean, let's say I'm walking I'm for the first time in, I don't know, in New York. I've never been there. Of course, if I'm just walking on the street, I cannot use a virtual VR visor or whatever. I can just use my phone. But what if I have a kind of transparent screen? I'm talking about augmented reality in a way. But what if I can use a kind of screen I can put on top of something and I can receive more information, or I can see inside a building? What if I can like speak with people or meet people in a different way without being attached to a device like a mobile or like a computer or a visor or whatever? I mean, it's about interfaces. That's it. So the integration will happen when the access to the digital world will be easier in a way. So now I'm really attached to the computer because I'm using my earphones and they are plugged. I'm using a USB connection right now. So I have a desktop computer. I'd love to have the same experience, for example, staying in a park, enjoying, I don't know, a sunny day, for example. I mean, so it's about also interfaces, about technology. I mean, that's the transition. I remember when the first Nokia phones, they were out, downloading and installing an app was something about... engineers in a way. It was very difficult to do it. When Apple designed the iPhone and distributed the iPhone, it was super easy to download and install an app. Everyone was talking and using apps on the phone. So everything is about also how easy it is to use the technologies. And so that's basically my answer.
Awesome.
What do you think,
Thank
George?
You, and yes, George.
About one, what do I think? Because you asked two questions. Which one?
Just the first one I asked.
Which about if we can only be in virtual world?
Yes. What if we start enjoying virtual space more than physical space?
The thing is, we are social, physical beings. So it's very difficult. I would be very skeptical to see us only in virtual, unless we transcend the physicality of our body and we become consciousness only, assuming this could happen, then you might be able to be only virtually. But as long as we have the senses, we have the physicality of things that we can in a very difficult way to simulate it in virtual reality will be only partial. Now look at your mobile, for example. You spend a lot of time on your mobile, but it's not like you always are on your mobile. Even though it's now taking a lot of your time, it is partially taking your time. I think it will be the same for virtual reality. Now, go with the second question, and here that's why I want to continue, because it makes sense to say that if you want to integrate virtual reality into the physical one, then this might be an interesting exercise. It could be very close to what we know as mixed reality. And in this way, this of course will depend on the technology itself. But I do not see, in mixed reality, you have a three-dimensional overlapped element on a virtual element on an existing reality. In this way, if you can switch it on and off, then you get that option. There's a very well-known series that I appreciate called Altered Carbon. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but
Yes,
Altered
I
Carbon
watched.
actually, yes. So it's a very complicated series, but it's a very interesting one that gives you that a little bit of perspective about how the future could be if mixed reality, if the virtual is really mixed with reality.
Yeah, absolutely.
But definitely you need to switch it on and off. So if this is going to happen, it cannot be only virtual.
Do you think there will be a button to switch it off and on?
If you think about, for example, HoloLens, if you think about these type of or Magic Leap, or these things that are being now in experimental modes, and then they're trying to show you that you can create a virtual existence on top, a three-dimensional virtual existence on top of on the physical one, then you can of course switch it on and off. But that will depend on the technology itself, will depend on how they will evolve it.
Let's
But
imagine
mixed reality will have even bigger impact on society if tools become accessible to all members, of course, of the society, with available digital infrastructure accessible to all countries.
I totally
This
agree with
actually-
your point about mixed virtual reality. But
Yeah.
imagine internet. So we have now internet, okay? We started it like, let's say 30 years ago, 25 years ago. And do we dare to turn it off?
But why we want to do that?
So because if it's gonna reach to a point that it is dangerous for the entire civilization, to the entire humanity, do we dare to turn it off?
Well, that
No,
depends. If
we
it depends
don't.
on our survival, if it will depend on our survival, then we will have to. Like what's happening now in the global warming. I mean, it will depend on our survival. How we act or what we do will depend on whether humanity will survive or not in the future. So sometimes you will not have a choice and you will have to act.
But I don't
It will
think
depend
that.
on your survival.
This reminds me of
I
an
don't think
interview
that
between-
we. Yes, let me just
Ahmed,
continue, Faisal, just 1 second.
Okay, go ahead,
I don't
go
think
ahead.
that we will have the button. Maybe we will have the button, but it will be so extremely hard and dangerous that we won't need, or we won't have there to turn it off. But imagine now, if we turn the internet off, or if we just closed electricity or anything, like what would be happen to the entire countries, to the entire populations, the number of unemployments, the economies, it will all crash. It will all go down, melt down. And so definitely we can turn it off, but is it practical to turn it off? We are so dependent on the technology, on the internet, on the electricity, let alone electricity, just on internet. We are so dependent on the internet
but
now.
I think you misunderstood. Wait, you misunderstood what I said. I said you will have the option to switch on and off the mixed reality. This is what I meant. So you will have the option to switch it on and off, and to choose to switch it on and off. But in a situation where this will depend on your survival, you will not have that option, and you will have to be pushed to do it. Otherwise, you will not survive. But these are extreme, hypothetical, circumstances or future way of thinking in a dystopian like. But it doesn't have to be like this. This is what I meant. It doesn't have to be like this. And in the concept that I was trying to explain is that you will have the option to switch it on and off, because sometimes having a mixed reality on top of the virtual reality can be dangerous, can be very cumbersome. So it depends. But this is what I meant. I didn't mean that it is something
Yes.
that you have to switch it off. Yeah.
Yes. I just, yeah, okay. Maybe I misunderstood. It's okay. Okay, Faisal, you can go on.
Yeah, no, it's a very interesting conversation because, it reminds me of an interview between Joe Rogan and Elon Musk, where they had this same sort of similar conversation about when Neuralink becomes accessible to everyone on the planet, and you're able to communicate without, sound, without actually speaking, and you can just kind of send radio waves to each other, right? Does that become sort of a invasion of privacy when everything is uploaded into the cloud and the internet, and will you be able to control that? And I think, Hamid, that's sort of what you're talking about, right? When you kind of get connected to this cloud, then it becomes hard to sort of, disconnect from it, right? Because it becomes part of your life.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Let's just imagine. Sorry, I'm interrupting you. And Arturo said previously as well, like now our phones are our extensions. So each one of the phones of each one of us are the mirror of our personalities. You go to the galleries, you understand what type of the guy or gal he or she is. You go to his or her Instagram, you understand what is he doing or she doing, and what is he interested in. And definitely this is something that we cannot live without it right now. Yes, we can live. We can turn it off and go for a vacation for a week. That's true. But we cannot turn it off for the entire society. We cannot work without it. We cannot continue as 7 billion people on the planet without internet or any cell phone. That was my point. Yeah.
Yes, but Hamid, think of it as a survival. So would you switch on your mobile and look at it while you're driving? This will make you die. So when it comes to your survival, you need to have the option to switch on and off any technology that you have. So the idea of having option and freedom to switch it on and off is a necessity because it might depend on you to survive or not. And this is what I meant.
Yes, I totally agree with you. 1 out of every 4 driver, they don't even watch the road. Like they are all on the phone. So this has become so essential in our lives that we don't even look at the road. While driving.
No, Hamid, in a way, we can say that since George used the word survival, in a way, the mobile and the internet is a way of surviving right now. So it's like also the idea of surviving is evolutive. It's it's has a kind of evolution, And I can say that right now, internet is a part of this idea in a way. If you just think that also our money, they depends on the internet. You can access to your bank accounts basically because you have an internet connection on your mobile, on your computer. Otherwise, you cannot go on a bank in the weekend, for example. Let's say everything right now. So internet is a way of surviving. There are many, millions of people right now that are surviving thanks to the internet because they can work also in a pandemic. For example, we can go. So also the concept of surviving is in terms of evolution.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I agree with you guys. Yeah, cool. Do we have any questions from our audience? Faisal?
I don't think there's any questions, but if you do have questions, guys, you can just come on stage and ask them. And just sort of continuing the conversation about Neuralink and sort of putting these chips in our brains. Since it's already happening, I think there was actually one question in the chat that sort of had to do with this, and it's from T4Z, I think. T4Z, if you're still in the can you come up and ask your question? It says, thinking of what you said right now, do you think in the future we could control our characters with our brain impulses with a type of VR headset? And I think with Neuralink, actually, you don't need a VR headset. So this is a sort of a BMI, a brain-machine interface, where you can connect it directly to your brains, your neurons, and you can control sort of devices or whatever you want to control. So I think that's definitely a possibility in the future. What do you guys think about that?
Well, I didn't do any research on that, so I'm not an expert on that, of course, but I said before that everything is about interface. Faisal, mentioned this very powerful definition, which is brain interface, which is amazing, actually. I always thought about that. Yeah, that sometimes I have, in terms of as a designer, I have ideas, I have shapes in my mind, and so I need to translate into digital objects and then into physical ones. But the most challenging step sometimes is mostly the translation from the ideas to a digital model. So of course I'm dreaming of an age where I can directly translate my ideas thanks to a brain interface into digital objects, let's say. I don't know if it's science fiction. I don't think so. It's just about time again. But I'm not, I don't know this kind of technology in a very deeply, so I cannot give you an answer on that.
I mean, for me, I think it's a little bit about also the philosophy or the concept of transhumanism. I mean, if you want to think about, combining technology and machines with humans, and by this type of technology that you're talking about, I think there's a big ethical question that could be asked to everyone, which, if this technology is not accessible to everyone and this technology will make you a superhuman, then you will have actually some type of a separation between people who can embrace this type of technology and become, elite, if I can say that, because they will become superhuman, versus the people who cannot afford that technology, and then they will become, normal. And I think that could create a lot of ethical questions. And I think we're a little bit far from that, but you never know.
Exactly. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for your great answers. And if there are no questions, I am going to go to ask my last question. Faisal, do you have any questions?
Yeah, there's one question from MMMNS something. MMNKSR. It's actually a good question based on the answer Arturo gave. It says the idea of physicality and the main difference between virtual and real is the tangibility of the physical space and full bodily perception of the space. What kind of impact would gadgets or suits that gives us possibility to touch the virtual objects, smell the virtual space, and so on, have on architecture or in architectural experience generally? So I guess just to tweak the question a little bit, what would sort of these brain-machine interfaces sort of allow for architecture to do? How would that kind of impact architecture in the future?
Faisal, I didn't understand. Hello, guys, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
I actually didn't get the question 100% for, I don't know, was not that clear for me, the sound, beg your pardon. Can you please repeat the last part?
Yes, I'll shorten it. So the brain-machine interface that you were speaking about, how do you think that it could affect architecture and virtual space in the future?
Well, it depends if you are designing virtual objects or if you are designing physical one. I said before that when I simply designed a furniture using virtual reality headset, it actually changed the way I was perceiving the object and then designing it. It's not simple and easy to give a general answer to that, but I think that every time we experience something new and something different, it affects us. And it also works for the virtual reality and any kind of new interface that sometimes also can also create a conflict in the way we design, because I mean, when you experience for the first time pure and total virtual reality experience, and as I said before, it's not only about navigating spaces, it's about really actually designing something. I think it also creates a kind of conflict because it's something that you are not prepared to, and of course it will affect the way you think about it. And I also wondering right now, that experience changed the way I design objects. I would say yes, because now I expect something more from myself. I was talking about how we designed the concept car. Now I couldn't do an object like that in a traditional way because I really perceived that kind of new possibilities in using VR, and probably I will expect something more from myself. So it's a way to challenge it was a way to challenge myself. So it's not easy to give a general answer, but I always remember that experience, that to me is an experience that improved the way I design objects.
Right, absolutely. It's like like the mobile phone. Once you start having a sort of an iPhone, for example, you don't want to go back to dial-up to dial-up mobile.
Exactly.
So I definitely agree. George, do you agree with that, or do you have a comment on that?
I'm not sure if I understood well the question, but if I understood it, I think the person who asked was trying to tell us about if there's other than the visual and the auditory, it's like talking about the haptic experience. And if this is the case, then I would say that the haptic technology that now they're trying to evolve is actually very interesting, like certain gloves, certain jackets, so where you can actually simulate the touch of the physical world. So in a sense that, if you create a sphere and you try to touch it in the physical world, you have the glove that make you feel that you are touching it, and so forth. So I think there are these type of technologies that are being evolved in virtual reality, and the more you can incorporate senses, the better the experience.
Thank you.
Right, absolutely. Sir, go ahead, Ahmed.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, if we don't have any question from our audience, we can. Yes, sure. Can you come closer to the stage? Can you come closer to the stage, please? Can you get a little bit closer, John? Okay, yes, I hear you now.
This is actually an interesting question, and there's a lot of different research based on this. Just to put a little plug here, if you go on the Illusorr website, in publications, you'll actually see some articles loosely based on this topic. And there's different ways of answering this, but one thing is that our brains are actually sort of designed over 500,000 years. They've evolved to understand the world in 3 dimensions. And for the past maybe 13,000 years of human civilization, we've only given them sort of 2 dimensions when it comes to design and experience. And now we're beginning to sort of open them up to 3 dimensions, 4-dimensional experiences. So I think they are definitely designed to handle different sort of experiences. And another thing is that there's this researcher called Donald Hoffman who recently published a sort of new theory within physics and psychology called the interface theory. And what he says is that everything that you see and experience in reality isn't actually what's truly out there. It is only a sort of an interface, he calls it. And he says our brains actually don't give us what is true. It gives us what we need in order to survive, which is an interesting way to look at things, right? So when you think about what your brain can handle, so far it can handle anything that allows you to survive, and it will adapt in order to do that. So if virtual reality is sort of maybe another layer on top of what we normally experience or what we normally perceive in that way. And we spoke about this in last night's panel as well. There's no real difference between the virtual and physical. It's only a different type of reality. The physical world is a real reality, and so is the virtual. It's just a different type of reality in that sense. I don't know if yeah. Right. I think right now it's maybe just the technology that hasn't quite caught up. But for example, we spoke about the Neuralink earlier, right? When you have a chip in your brain and it's no more a sort of headset, it's actually a chip that's implanted in your brain that allows you to see things augmented. You're not gonna have that kind of demarcation between real and virtual anymore. It's gonna be almost like a seamless interface, right? So I think when you have that, then the problem kind of goes away of having to remove a headset and then come back into real or physical world. Do you have any more questions from the audience?
Okay, it seems we have nothing to ask from audience. So I'll ask from George and Arturo as a last question. What kind of advice would you like to share with young designers?
Well, my advice is to be always open. I said before, the trivial sentence that we are using, not trivial actually, but the common and well-famous sentence that we are using, only the 20% of our brain capacity. But probably the way to expand, to enhance our capabilities, maybe is connected with this kind of n-dimension experience and like challenging ourselves also with a new kind of relationship with the digital space. Probably working and experiencing daily this kind of new kind of parallel world in a way, and probably it's the direction in order to enhance our capabilities as human beings, not only as designers.
Yeah, thank you. What about you, George?
I think I would say an advice like I usually say to all my students. The best way is to try and don't be afraid of trying. VR, unless you go in it and you try, you cannot really grasp and understand the potential of it. And for me, when I'm in VR, mode, I actually feel like I'm in an imaginarium. I would call it that because it is a place for the imagination to expand and flourish. And this is exactly what we are offering to us now. And I would definitely advise anyone and everyone to actually go on VR, try it yourself, and see the potential of it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for your time joining this panel. I really appreciate it. It was such an inspiring and interesting talk. I really enjoyed it personally, and we have a lot of audience in here. Thanks everyone who joined to this discussion in the auditorium of Pylon. I really appreciate that. If there is no final word that you would like to add, you can add. Other than that, we can, I think, end this panel discussion and start exploring other installations inside the pylon. But we will need to restart ourselves to go in the parallel universe of this pylon to see the new installations type. So if Arturo and George has anything to add, they can add. If not, we can just end the panel here.
I would like to invite the audience to actually check the exhibition of the gravity defined architecture for Rising Oasis for the waterfall prototype that actually is being exhibited there, guys. So I would definitely invite them to check it out to experience the floating space and the floating building.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks for joining. Appreciate your time and thank you.
I want to thank you everyone for the invitation and have a nice day. I don't know how we can say if
yes,
is
just
it
have
day
a nice
or
day.
night. Have a nice experience.
Exactly.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much. Goodbye, guys. Actually.